Hello, everyone, and I'm so excited that you came to our Protecting Your Credit Score class today. My name is Sarah Hischlin, and I work for STCU. It's a credit union that was started in 1934 by educators. And so ever since then, education has been in our DNA. That's why we love partnering with WSU. But it's really important to us to teach people financial literacy. We understand it's not something that's taught in the schools very much, although there's a great need for it. So this is our attempt to kind of bring everyone along. And today I'm delighted to show you some information about protecting your credit score. This is probably one of the most important lessons that we teach. There are so many things that are balancing on what your credit score is and things that you may not even realize. And so that's why I love doing this particular lesson. I, for a long time, didn't think a lot about my credit score. I wasn't going to buy a car. I wasn't going to buy a house. I had both of those. It took wanting to have a new job for me to understand how important a good credit score is. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. We'll have time at the end if you want to ask some questions, or if you want to stop me in somewhere in the middle and just in the group chat ask a question. All right, here we go. Protect your credit score. Woohoo! So what are we going to learn today? Well, we're going to learn, just a little bit of history about it, and we're going to talk about some common myths that people have about their credit score, special credit circumstances, access and monitoring your credit report, really, really important. A lot of people don't do this, don't even think about doing it. And in our environment right now with COVID-19 and a huge spike in scammers, even more important to do it today than any other time. We'll touch on what do you do if your credit score has been compromised, and then address a little bit of recovery and repair. So here we go. So big thing, what is a credit score? Well, it's an algorithm that was started in the 60s by two gentlemen. One's last name was Fair, the other last name was Isaac, so they came up with the Fair-Isaac Company. They call it FICO. And it's the most commonly used model. Now, there are some out there, there's new ones that they're trying to adopt here in the last year, but this is the most commonly used one, and so that's why we address it here. And this is the one that's checked regularly if you were trying to apply for a loan for a home or a car, anything like that. The range on it is anywhere from 300, it's a numerical range, so it's 300 to 850. 300 not being very good. In fact, it's not good at all. You will not get any loans with that. But all the way up in incremental elements, all the way up to 850. And you can fall anywhere within that. And it's important that you know where you're at and how you can make it better. It's used, the reason it's so important, it's used in underwriting loans and other things. But the other thing that people are unaware of is that your credit score is also used or evaluated when you apply for new jobs. Many times, and future employers will want to know that because it paints a picture about you and how reliable you might be. Insurance companies also check it. If you have higher than, your brother, your sister has lower insurance rates and you don't drive anything different, it could be that your credit score isn't as good as theirs, and that's why, because the better your credit score, the lower your insurance rates will be. And it sounds crazy, but they have figured out that people who have lower credit scores will file claims faster and more often than people who have higher credit scores. Logically, it makes some sense, but it will affect how much you pay. And the whole idea of the credit score is that it reliant on information from consumer reporting agencies. So that's these three big ones that you're going to see. We'll touch on them right next in our next slide, where we talk about the three. There's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Those are the three big ones. Of those, I think probably Experian is the biggest. They also had a huge data breach here a couple of years ago. The scores vary by agency. This is really important to know. Each agency uses a slightly different model, and it's because of that, the information will vary from agency to agency. You may have a 720 at one, 745 and another, and maybe a 690 at the other one. So you just have to be aware that the numbers are going to be slightly different. And the thing about this is the algorithms they use to determine what your credit score is a closely guarded secret. So it's a bit of a game because you're not absolutely sure what you need to do to make your credit score better. Now, there's things we know very much right off the bat that we can do, but it's the algorithm is a closely guarded secret, how they do it. And so it just behooves us to be as responsible as we can. The credit score determines your loan approvals, who is approved and what kind of rates that you're going to pay. You can see these ads on TV for cars, 0 APR, you are going to have no problem getting a loan. That's only on approved credit. So they can say it, but when you go in to buy a car, they will run a check on your credit score. And if it comes back 690, you won't get the same kind of rate that someone with a 820 gets, just so you're aware of that. And your score, as I said before, it impacts your insurance. You will pay more for your insurance if your credit score is low. It's a funny balancing act. And the auto insurers rely heavily on credit scores to price their policies. Not a well-announced thing. A lot of people are unaware of it when they go in to get insurance. That's why we try to always include this in our information. They rely very heavily on your credit scores. Good to know. All right, so how they keep score? Well, this is payment history collected by the consumer reporting agencies, and that's a credit bureau. It's one of those things, TransUnion, Experian. Those are consumer reporting agencies, and subscribers report to those credit bureaus. And so you might have maybe your landlord subscribes so that he can follow up. If you apply for a rental property, he can then turn around and ask for your credit report, or not your credit report, but your credit score from these credit bureaus. It's property managers, municipalities. If you're applying for client utilities and a new utility setup, they may run a credit score check on you as well, just to see. And credit bureaus, they turn around. So there's the credit bureau, there's the subscribers who send information to them. I know this because I have an account with Les Schwab. When I get my Les Schwab bill paid off, it immediately sends an alert to the credit bureau saying she's paid off, it's all good, and my score goes up. If I don't pay that, Les Schwab sends sends a message to the credit bureau saying she's late, she's been 2 months late, or he's been 2 months late, someone's late, and that brings your credit score down. So these subscribers are sending information, but they're also asking for information. So when I go to apply for that Les Schwab account, they're going to do a quick credit check on me to make sure that I'm reliable. And that credit check, my credit score, tells them how likely I am to default on any bill I have. So the higher my credit score, the less likely I am to default, and the more likely they are to provide credit to me. Now, if your credit score is pretty bad, that may not be any fault of yours. It could be you just haven't established credit yet. But you may find that you will pay more for certain things until you can bring that credit score up. All right. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Okay, so how they keep score, excuse me, I'm trying to find my place here. My computer's not fancy. There we go. Okay, this is an important slide. What affects the score? And you know what? Well, what doesn't affect the score? And this is very important because if you think about in the 60s when they started the FICO, the scoring system, the algorithm for scoring, before that, if you'd gone in and asked for a loan and you were a woman, or maybe just somebody they didn't like, or they didn't care for your skin color, for whatever reason, They could have just said no. But now that we have this FICO score and a credit score in general, it levels the playing field. So now everyone is treated essentially the same. You're evaluated on certain things, but there are things that don't affect it. Age, race, religion, national origin, gender, or marital status. This really helps because these are elements that no longer are taken into account if you are asking for a loan. The other thing that's really important, the thing that doesn't affect your credit score, is your salary. A lot of people think, oh, people that make a lot of money, they have a great credit score. Not necessarily true. I know many people who are making just slightly above minimum wage have terrific credit scores because they do the things that we'll touch on in the next slide. They do it faithfully and they've never missed. And so it doesn't really matter how much you make. Might make life easier, but that's not the critical element. Interest rates currently being charged, no, doesn't affect your score. Child support obligations, if they're satisfactorily paid, do not affect your credit score. They do affect it if they are defaulted on. And then certain types of inquiries. Now there's a hard inquiry on your credit score and a soft. Hard inquiry is if you're applying for a new credit card or you're applying for a car loan, anything like that. That's a hard inquiry. A soft inquiry is you are going out and checking your own credit score. You're looking at your credit report. You're pulling your once a year credit report and checking on it. Those are soft inquiries that they do not affect your score at all. Multiple hard inquiries will affect it though. So you want to be really careful about not having, a flurry of credit cards. A lot of people, when they're getting a home loan, feel like they want to go out and buy appliances. And so they open a Lowe's card or they want to do other things. And they open 2 or 3 credit cards before the loan has been approved. And suddenly the interest rate goes up on their home loan because all of a sudden there's these hard hits on their credit score. So we tell people, when you are looking at buying a home and you're in that loan process, don't open any more credit cards because it will impact your score. Okay, but what affects the score? And this is, if you take anything away today, take this away, because this is the most important element about what affects the score. I talked about the fact that it's a bit of it's a closely guarded secret, the algorithm they use. But if you follow this pattern, generally you will do just fine with keeping your credit score up. So what is the most important thing? It's payment history. If you have bills, you need to pay them on time. I work with a lot of people who have a really hard time doing this. They don't even want to open their bills when they come. You need to open them and get those bills paid on time. If you can pay electronically, that's the best. But if you have to pay through the mail, make sure they're mailed 5 to 7 days in advance. So you're sure to get that there on time. Because with some credit cards, even a few hours late, even a day late, it shows up as a late payment on your credit history. So the payment history is probably the most important thing you can do. And if you can do that, show longevity with your payment history, not just, oh, I did it good for 6 months, but for years, your credit score goes up and up. Next thing, most important, how much do you owe? And this is interesting. When I work with high school students, I always tell them, learn how to play the game or the game will play you. And it's so true with credit, because credit card companies want you to have several credit cards because they would like you to run those up and then not be able to pay them so that they can then start charging you interest. What a great gig. I mean, you don't even have to do anything, you just charge them interest. So the idea on this, as I said, if you learn how to play the game so the game doesn't play you, it's credit utilization. If you get a credit card for $1,000, they recommend you do not use any more than 10% of that $1,000 and never more than 30%. The second you step over 30% of the credit utilization on that credit card, it impacts your credit score pretty dramatically. And so 10% of $1,000 is $100. It makes no sense why they would give you a credit limit of $1,000 if they didn't expect you to use it. Well, they kind of want you to run a bill up. But the key is knowing never go over 30% utilization on your credit card, on any revolving account where it's just automatically renewed every month. 10% is the best, but never over 30%. The next one, types of credit. This is less important, but it becomes more important as you get higher and higher. They do want you to have kind of a nice mix, maybe a car loan, a couple of credit cards. The key though, and this is why when I talk to young people, I always tell them, know what your own limits are. If you can't have 2 credit cards with $10,000 credit limit, if you're tempted to run those credit cards up, you see things you want, don't have them. It's not worth it. So this idea of types of credit really only comes into play when you are stable financially and you want to sort of extend your base of credit score. And then new credit, this is just, as I said, how many times if you applied for new credit. Credit history is also really important. You want to have a credit card that you've had for years. I have my American Express. They irritate me. They charge high interest, but I've had it for 15 years. And so that longevity of payments and being faithful back to the credit card company really is good for my credit score. So it's kind of a myth that says if you pay off a credit card, close it. Maybe not. Keep it open, be sensible about how you use it, and show that you can have it for a long period of time and use it sensibly. That's a very important element of your credit score. But the two most, and I always probably belabor this too much, the two most important are how much you owe that credit utilization and how your payment history. Have you paid on time for months, hopefully years? It just has to become a habit, okay? We're going to touch on each of these just a tiny bit more. Payment history, it's a funny thing because if you are paying your utilities and you pay on time every month, your phone company, you pay on time every month, they don't care. They are not reporting that to the credit bureaus. They expect you to be good with it. You might say, well, I'm really good with my debit card. I'm very careful with it. And I never overdraft my account. I never do any. They don't report that to the credit bureau. They expect you to do that. But if you fail to pay your utilities on time, they're just like that kid on the playground that you can be perfectly good all year, and then you do one bad thing and he has to run and tell the teacher that you did it. That's kind of what the utility companies and the phone companies are like. You can do it right over and over again, but if you do it wrong, they'll report you. So this whole idea of payment history is huge. And they're going to look at the number of accounts that you have. Have you paid on time? If you have been overdue, how long a period were you overdue? And the other thing is collections or delinquent accounts. It's important to know that many things will stay on your credit report. If it's a negative hit, such as a defaulted on loan, it'll be there for 7 years. We will talk about this more. Student loans, interestingly, they stay in your credit history for a long time, much longer than 7 years. Now, they may have stopped trying to collect on it, but it still sits on your credit report, and it will impact you if you try to apply for a house loan or a car loan, anything like that. It comes back to bite you later on. So good to think about. So payment history, amounts owed. This is that credit utilization I talked about. Most people will say 10%. The absolute limit is 30%. And installment loans, this is another one, excuse me, where it's like your car loan. If you take out too long of a car loan, they're really promoting long car loans right now because cars are so expensive. In order to get that monthly payment down, they may take it out 6-7 years. But the problem is you're still paying on a car that may not be worth what you're paying on it. the amount that's still due on it. It's called being underwater with that. And so you want to be real aware of that you can't extrapolate it out too far and still have it not hit your score. Okay. Now, some tips to improve your ratio. You can pay down the debt. I personally think that's absolutely the best way. You can also apply for a credit, a limit increase. So if you have $1,000 and you've spent above your 30%, you can ask for that credit limit to be raised so that it looks on paper like you're under 30%. Now, you have to be very careful, because if you're a person who's not in good control, then you feel like, oh man, now I've got $5,000 limit on my card. Wow, I think I'm going to go on vacation. No, you use that only as a means to improve your credit score, but I always recommend paying it down as soon as you can. All right, and I'm just going to awfully fast here, so stop me if something looks funny. Okay, so length of credit history. I always get asked this by kids, and they say, well, I don't have credit. I don't have anything. How long is it going to take me? It takes at least 6 months to establish a score, okay, to get something on that looks more like a score. And paying over a long period of time demonstrates responsibility. So that's why this whole idea of length of credit history, why don't close the credit card, use it sensibly, and keep it for a long time. And one thing you can do with some of the credit cards, you feel like, oh, it's not a very good rate. I could get a better rate with, CityCap or one of the others. You can call these companies and ask them to lower your interest rate, especially if you show faithful payments over a period of time. They don't want to lose your business. And so many times they will agree to lower the interest rate. It does not hurt to ask. I have done it, and they've granted me that in the past. So good to think about. If you have a credit card that's one of your old ones that you want to keep to show longevity, but it doesn't have the best rate, call them. Ask them to lower the rate. They can do it. Okay, closed accounts continue to impact credit history and score, even if they're closed. Now, good standing ones, they're just like good things. They stay there for 10 years. That's terrific. Bad ones stay there for 7 years. And boy, I tell you, 7 years can feel like an eternity if you're trying to buy a car or do something different, maybe a house, and it continually comes back. You defaulted on a loan, or you missed payments and payments and payments. Those stay on there for 7 years, and they can be difficult to overcome. New credit, we talked about this. This is just applying for too many credit cards. So tempting to do at Christmas time, because everywhere you go, would you like to apply for our Target card? Would you like to apply for our Macy's card? They all want you to have a credit card, because then you may end up owing them money, a lot of money. I always recommend don't open retail type credit cards. They're just, unless you're very good about keeping track and you only are very selective about which ones, don't do it on impulse when you're standing at the counter and they say you'll get an additional 15% off. It's not a good thing, because that's a hard hit on your credit score, and it also shows that you are applying for too much credit. It indicates maybe you're not in good control of your money. Soft inquiries never impact your score, though, and we talked about that. Checking your credit history, checking your score, getting your report, none of that affects it. And when employers or insurance companies check, that's also considered a soft inquiry, and so they don't. Creditor review or pre-screen, when you get in the mail these "you've been approved" letters, everyone gets them, especially if you're younger. You've been approved, and they make you feel very special. These are called pre-screen opportunities, and they can do a soft inquiry on your credit score and show that you have a certain score and that you are now pre-approved for their credit card. I always tell the high school seniors when I talk to them, throw those out, shred them, burn them, because if you get a credit card, you want to be in control of which card you get. They're not going to offer you the best rates when they send those letters to you. Go online and find the credit card that's best for you and settle on that one. But throw those the things you get in the mail, shred them, burn them, do anything. But I always recommend don't go along with them. And don't, if you can avoid applying for Macy's cards and all of the other retailer cards, they're just, it depends on where you're at in your life if you're able to have good control over those. Okay. And then the last one that we'll touch on is just this types of credit. And this is really when you get down the road and you really are refining your credit score and you want to have that good mix of a car loan, a home loan, some sort of bank loan or bank card. And this is when a retail card comes in really handy because it shows a nice mix that you're able to manage a mix of credit without defaulting on anything. And that just shows good control, budgeting, sensible buying. Okay. All right. Excuse me. Okay, so we talked about this, and this always comes up. How long is something going to stay on my credit report? Well, positive reports, as I said, 10 years. They're just terrific. They're wonderful. Delinquencies, collections, charge-offs, anything like that, 7 years. Chapter 13 bankruptcies are 7 years, and then 7 is 10 years. So I realize, especially in our time right now, there's so many people out of work and there's so much anxiety about money and how we're going to pay bills. This is good to keep in the back pocket and just remember, how long will those things stay on my credit report if I default on that loan or if I decide I just can't pay on it. A lot of the companies will work with you. If you are in a spot where you can't pay a certain loan for a while, work with the company, work with your credit union or your bank, and come up with some solutions for it, because you really you want to avoid defaulting. It will impact your credit score tremendously, and there's ways to not do that. Okay, and unpaid tax liens is 15 years. Now, student loans, we talked about them, they can stay indefinitely. Now that they will stop trying to collect from you sometimes after 7 years. It really depends on which student loan you have. There's many different ones, but it can come back later in life when you try to buy a house. And I've read circumstances where out of the blue, they came in and tried to turn you over for collections years later when you thought it was just all gone away. And the problem with student loan debt doesn't go away. So it's better to deal with it upfront and handle it correctly. Okay, impacts of divorce. Divorce does not protect, divorce terms. When you write up a divorce decree, you cannot protect your credit score in that, because any debts that were created while you were married are both of yours. So we recommend that you really pay off all jointly held accounts prior to a decree of divorce, because that way it's fair to everyone. Because if one spouse says, the decree says, well, she said she'll pay off the car, and then afterwards she doesn't, he is still responsible for those payments. It just, you're not released from responsibility because of a divorce decree. A lot of people ask about co-signing and how that works. Well, it's co-signers are treated the same as a primary borrower in terms of credit reporting. If that primary borrower defaults on the loan, two credit scores are impacted: the person who co-signed and the person who took out the loan. And the person who co-signed is now responsible if the original loan primary borrower, if they default on it, then the co-signer is responsible. Now, I know situations where parents have co-signed for their children, and then it's an interesting idea. They've taken out life insurance policies on their children so that if anything happens and they can't pay it back, they will use the life insurance to pay back the brunt, or the loan that was taken out. One way to handle that. we just recommend being very cautious when you co-sign because you will be held responsible and it will impact your credit score. Okay. So how do you, I mean, there's two things. This actually should be, how do you establish, how do you recover and repair? Because many times they follow similar patterns. So you may, good payment history is really the most critical one. And over time, it can repair your credit. You may have to apply for a secured credit card through a bank or credit union. And what that means is that you will put $200 into savings. They will give you a credit limit of $200 on that credit card, but you're paying it back every month. And after a year, usually the term on it can be 6 months to a year, you have shown good payment history over a period of a year, and they will refund your $200. So you may not have a huge credit limit on that card, but they helped you show that you have good payment history. If you have to, you can talk about having someone co-sign, but it's hard. But if you have a family member that might be willing, that is one way to establish some kind of credit. Check your reports, the credit reports frequently. And there are sites that you can actually check every day now to see if there's been any activity. Quizzle is one you'll see at the end of the presentation today. Quizzle is one that you can go out and it will check every day to see if there's been activity. Because with so many scams going on right now, it's important that you see if someone has taken your name, your Social Security, and is running up credit all over the place. In our fraud presentation, I put a slide in there that showed what happened when they put 1,500 names with Social Securities. They were fictitious names, fictitious Social Securities, addresses, phone numbers, all of it, completely fictitious. They put it on the dark web, and within 2 weeks, it had been accessed over 1,200 times, and it was in 22 countries, all the information on that. So there is a network underneath that is trying very hard to get information. We recommend check often and be thorough about checking your credit report. And if you have paid something off, we recommend you keep a proof of payment for that, because it may not get reported, to the credit bureau. And so you may have to go write them a letter, show them that you've paid this off, you would like that taken off your credit report. And it's a give and take. You have to really go work with them, show proof that you've paid it, and then they'll change it. And dispute incorrect items. You'd be surprised how many times things are not correct on your credit report. And as you get older and you have more reports on you, there's lots of things that can be inaccurate. I've had to go and address several things that were completely inaccurate on my credit report. Not the case all the time, but it does happen quite a bit. Okay, so how do you build credit? There's a credit building loan, and that's as you can see, it's typically borrowed money held by the lender in an account released to you when the loan is repaid. And it's a guarantee. The bank or the credit union, they will give you a loan and they will hold the borrowed money until you've paid it back. So you actually don't have that money, but you're paying it back to them. Once you show a pattern of paying it back, then you can have the loan. Collateralized, loans, this is really much less risky for lenders. They're saving secured loans and a secured credit card, what we just talked about, where they will have you deposit or open a savings account for a set amount of money, then they give you a credit card and you show good faith and payments back. It's so important that it's the good faith and payments back that will, and consistent and on time, that will really build your credit score. There's no easy way to do this. It's over time, and it's being very careful and very sensible about what you do. So what do you do if you think that your credit has been compromised? And I mean, that's really a scary thought, isn't it? Well, most of the time, when Experian had its it had a lot of records exposed, they offered free credit services or monitoring services for a year. Actually, it was longer than a year. I took it because I want that. And if you have your credit, if you have information like Target, when they lost a lot of records, they offered credit monitoring. Take it because it will help in the long run. Once a year, you're given your credit report for free. And there's lots of sites out there that will try to charge you for it, but you're given one once a year for free. Now, what you can do, excuse me, is that the 3 credit reporting agencies, you can ask for one the first quarter of the year, ask from the second one maybe late summer, and ask for the third later in the year. So you actually can check your credit report, have it sent to you 3 times if you just do individuals. If you want to do them all at once, you get that once a year for free. Now, because I just got an alert on mine that I check mine quite frequently, and I got an alert that my email address had been compromised on the dark web. I just received this information yesterday. So what I'm going to do right now, because I don't know how much more of my information is there, I'm going to do what's called a fraud alert. And this is, you can consider placing a credit freeze or a fraud alert on your account. And what this is, we'll talk fraud alert first. Well, actually, we'll cover it more in just a minute. But these are 2 ways that you can kind of seal your credit score so that somebody can't access it if they are trying to, from someone who's stolen your identity. Try to file your taxes early. This is really important. A lot of people wait or postpone it, sometimes because they owe, sometimes just because they don't get to it. It opens the door for scammers to come in and apply for your taxes in your name and have it sent to them. Happens every year, and it happens a lot every year. We recommend not allowing that to happen. So do it early and don't let it be compromised. Scammers are trying to target everyone. They are working 24/7 to steal money. And there's no way to say it any more plainly than that. So just be aware of it. Don't fall for the phishing, the vishing, the schmishing, any of the things that make it sound like, oh, it's an emergency, you need to do this, you need to click on this link, you need to do those things. Make yourself very aware of some of the scams that are going on the stimulus money was one of them. You might have received things in your Facebook page or in your email or as a text also saying, we'd love to help you get your stimulus money. If you can give us your bank account, we can make sure that it's deposited. It will look very authentic, and most of the time it's not. So we just want you to be aware of those. And keep track of your financial accounts. You'd be surprised how many people don't look at their bills. They just pay them, or they pay them electronically. And so you see your American Express and I owe $495. Okay, just send it. And you don't really remember what you paid, what you bought. You really should go back and review all of your account summaries on all your credit cards, because they will slip them in and you might not even notice it. And in fact, a lot of the skimmers now will charge you like $2 charge on the scammer just to make sure it's an active account. And if you see that, then you can stop it. But if you just let it go, then they know they've got an active account and they can continue using that number and your PIN. And skimmers are a chronic problem at gas stations. ATMs have them. You just have to be very careful and very aware. Credit, and this is the 2 things we're going to talk now about: credit fraud alerts and credit freezes. And this credit fraud is what I'm going to do because of my email address being compromised. There's no cost with this. It lasts 90 days. And what it does, you just have to call one of the 3 companies, TransUnion, Experian. They only have to call one, because then they will contact the others and let them know. And what this does is it just makes, if you are going in to apply for something, a loan or anything, the people that you are applying with have to take additional steps to verify that it is actually you that's applying for that. You, the person, not someone pretending to be you. And it's just an extra step. The only time it's a problem is if you forget and have to open up a credit, and it's not a big deal. But probably the only thing that's different about this from a freeze is this is only 90 days, and then it automatically goes off. A credit freeze, on the other hand, a little more complicated. It's just more, it is what it says it is. It's a freeze. There may be a cost to it, depends on what state you're in, and it absolutely restricts any access to your credit report. Now, you have to contact each of the credit bureaus to have it done. The nice thing about this is it does completely freeze it, and it will last until you take it off. But if you forget and you apply for insurance or you do anything like that, you can't do anything. You can't apply for a job, you can't apply for insurance, get a new credit card, unless you take it off. Because otherwise it's like a shield. No credit inquiries are going to get past that until you tell them to take it off. So it's much more secure than just the fraud, and it stays on. So the fraud is only for 90 days, and they just have to further validate that it's you. So both of them provide protection. The credit freeze may be a little bit more so and longer. Okay, and so here they are, the big three. And these, we can send you these numbers. We will include those with a packet. We have a packet of information, debunking common credit mess, protecting your credit score glossary. And then we also have a handout for how to read your credit report, because they can be kind of confusing. And when you get them, you're not entirely sure what you're looking at. So that will help a little bit. We will include the three big ones and their phone numbers with that packet. And I believe if you contact Misty Myers, she will send those out to you. Those are the three. Let me see. So how do I get my free credit report? Everyone always says, this is the only place. www.annualcreditreport.com. Make sure you go through that. A lot of places will try to trick you into paying $25 or something for your credit report. You get one a year that's free, and it's a law. Okay, let me think. Is there anything else? Where can you get your credit score? Well, you can, access your FICO score for reference only at this site. But you can also check, there's several companies right now that will kind of monitor your credit report and give you an approximation of what your score is. There's Credit Karma, Quizzle does the same. I use Credit Sesame. They all very much do the same. They are monitoring, and they can give you at least a figure of very close to what your credit score is right now. And if there's been any hits on your credit score, what you can do to remedy it. I really like them. Credit Karma, Quizzle, Credit Sesame, I use them all. So, wow, I just feel like I just flew through that. I apologize. Thank you for attending. Are there any questions? Let me see if I chat. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. I hope that I didn't completely confuse you. But if you have some questions, I'll be here for a few minutes. Otherwise, please send an email to Misty, and she'll send out this packet with the information for you. Remember, pay your bills on time. Biggest thing you can do. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, as Sarah mentioned, you can email me if you need a packet sent to you, if you'd like more information about what was covered in the presentation today. I put my email address in the chat box, and feel free to email me to request that, and I'll get that mailed out to you. If there are no questions, Any last minute questions? Well, if you have questions after today, also feel free to email me those questions and we can connect you with Sarah and get those answered for you. We want to thank Sarah and STCU for their time with us today. And yeah, there are 2 more sessions, August 5th and August 6th. And so if you're interested in those, please attend. And yeah, thank you, Sarah, for your time.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.